Mwaruzi guseka neza, mwaruzi gufata neza, mwaruzi kubyina neza, uba mwiza ukabaruta, uri mwiza, uri mwiza.
Well, as we all know, in 1994, Rwanda, my home country, experienced one of the worst genocides in documented history. This was a genocide that was carefully, meticulously planned by a Hutu-led government, Hutus being the majority ethnic group in Rwanda, to exterminate Rwandan Tutsi minority. The genocide began officially on the evening of April 6. It lasted for approximately 100 days. And while estimates differ, depending on who you ask, the current government estimates that at least over 1 million people, men, women, and children, were murdered.
When my wife and I met with Paul Rusesabagina, who was the proprietor in the Hotel Rwanda movie, the question was asked, well, what's the biggest problem in Rwanda today? And he said, in a population of 9 million people, to have 1.2 million orphans, these kids are taking care of kids.
And I started thinking that it's just not enough to tell the stories. It's just not enough to say never again. Aid alone is not going to solve problems of poverty. In fact, I had seen in Rwanda where aid contributed to reinforcing the differences and allowing government officials to make decisions as to where resources were allocated rather than using the market, which is a much more efficient allocator. On the other hand, the market alone was absolutely not going to solve problems of poverty. And yet, if we didn't create a world where all human beings had access to making their own decisions, to solving their own problems, we would never get a world where you could say never again.
I think one of the issues in the lead up to a genocide, to events that now we call genocide or mass atrocities, is that governments in place or parties to a conflict start creating values, they start diverting institutions, they start creating new laws in their country. It's a whole process that leads to a genocide. Genocide is not an event, it's really a process. And we have to collectively, as an international community, start working on how to recognize the signals, how to recognize the writing on the wall early enough to be able to prevent genocide.
To really effectively, to really put muscle behind R2P in terms of genocide prevention, what you really need is a very, very public campaign and a very high level of public engagement.
I think what we now need to do is not look at these situations country by country, Darfur, Congo, Sri Lanka, but begin to look at responsibility to protect there's a class of countries that are facing a human security emergency.
So we have built this vision, this village, with funds, a lot of funds coming from Liquidnet, in a very short period of time. I think it was 2 years from the time that the idea was conceived to ultimately opening the village. And today there are the first class of 125 students who are living and eating and learning together in a beautiful, incredibly nurturing setting.
Mwaruzi guseka neza, mwaruzi gufata neza, mwaruzi kubyina neza, uba mwiza ukabaruta, uri mwiza, uri mwiza, uri ngabire mwarubaruta, mwaruzi gukunda abandi, mwaruzi kwakira abandi, mwaruka batega amatwi, uba mwiza ukabaruta, uri mwiza, uri mwiza, uri ngabire mwarubaruta, mwaruzi kwita ku bana, mwaruka barera neza.